risks and take chances, get messy, like Miss Frizzle told me to do. Magic School Bus reference for 7 people. Okay, good.
I got it. Don't worry.
Take chances, make mistakes, get messy. That's what it was. Shout out to Miss Frizzle.
Almost entirely.
I was homeschooled, so she was like my,
She was your science teacher.
She was my science teacher. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That was Bill Nye. How dare you?
Hey, Beards, you honestly think Josh's mom would let him watch Bill Nye? No way.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
You think I was reading Harry Potter for fun, Beards? Are you kidding me?
So Wishbone was your English class?
You're damn right.
Yeah!
You're damn right. Wishbone was my English class. Absolutely.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
I was basically educated on PBS.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not complaining. Great.
Look at us now.
Yeah, look at us.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Don't worry about the other news of the day, not quite yet, because it's a Tuesday. The Chiefs won a fun game on Sunday, and we have a way of doing things around here, gosh dang it. Woo!
Yeah!
That was a good one on my end.
This one had not a loud pop, but like a heavy pop.
Yeah, I don't have any confetti even on the desk in here. It is a party popper Tuesday because the Chiefs' offense is fixed, unless it isn't, but it might be, but it might not be. We'll figure it out. Plus, of course, we have a lot to talk about here today, more so even than your usual Chiefs Tuesday, because arguably the biggest game of the Chiefs season, at least given how it's panned out, certainly now at this point, the biggest game of the Chiefs season is just about 48 hours away. About 48, almost exactly 48 hours from now, we'll be wrapping up the Central Bank pregame show here in this studio. We'll be preparing to watch Chiefs Chargers, and in about 53 hours or so, 51 hours or so, we will be getting ready for a post-game show when I believe we will know who will win the AFC West. I think that there's a really good chance that it ultimately comes down to this game on Thursday, and we'll spend some time tonight looking ahead to that game. We'll spend some time tonight looking back at Chiefs Raiders, but it's not really where we're going to start on either of those counts, because the biggest news of the day today almost couldn't have caught me by bigger surprise, not just because of the nature of it. At this point, even the Chiefs have had to deal with their issue of COVID issues. Josh Gordon put on the COVID list on Monday, but today it was especially shocking for a little piece of a little background intel here for you. I was out there at Chiefs press conferences today, and there's a little whiteboard that they put up for everyone who's going to come out to talk to the media. And today it said, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and not Antonio Brown. That would have been surprising. Orlando Brown. Antonio Brown would have been an even bigger shocker. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Orlando Brown Jr., McCole Hardman, and the guy who was supposed to round out media availability from the Chiefs today was Chris Jones. A little surprised nobody from Chiefs PR snuck out a little long sleeve and just kind of wiped that whiteboard down a little bit right before pressers began, because Andy Reid came out, and one of the very first things that he said today is that Chris Jones has entered the COVID protocols. Now, in a normal week, that would be bad news for the Chiefs. In a normal week, you'd say, man, Chris Jones is at least going to miss practice, and it really puts him in a tough spot to be able to play on Sunday. In a normal week. Playing against your top, in terms of talent and standings, divisional rival late in the season for a game that could really tilt if you are the 2 seed, maybe the 1 seed, maybe the 5 seed, maybe the 6. In that fluctuating space, not having your best defensive player would be bad news, or at least having him, up in the air with several days to figure it all out. All of that is made considerably worse by the fact that the Chiefs play on Thursday Night Football. Josh Gordon and Chris Jones both seem terribly unlikely to play at this point, and I'm going to try to walk you through just some simple math. We didn't get any real answers on this front today from press conferences, but I want to give you some simple math. Also, for the Chargers, rookie left tackle Rashawn Slater is also in the COVID protocols. Seems very unlikely that he would play, but he and Josh Gordon do have an advantage that Chris Jones does not have, which is that they both tested positive on Monday. And at this point, maybe everyone already knows this, but this is one of those strange things that none of us would have ever given a blink of thought to 3 years ago, and now it's something that we all have written on the back of our hand. But for a vaccinated player to return, which we all reportedly believe, it has been reported, we do assume whatever, that Josh Gordon, Chris Jones, and Rashawn Slater are all vaccinated, so that this window is open, and that fact would probably bail them out for a Sunday game. And just, bail them out, I mean, just in terms of bad luck. I have no reason to think that anyone made a dumb decision or anything. We don't know how any of them got it, at least not publicly. I don't know. But you can get bailed out for Sunday with that fact, because what you need is the 2 negative tests 24 hours apart. If somebody had a false positive yesterday, it might have been Tyler Higbee, I think. Someone on the Rams had a false positive, and then a ton of their team had positives. But for Chris Jones right now, to have 2 negative tests 24 hours apart, we would expect them, we were talking about this around the media room after everything today, and I think where we ended up largely was that would probably, the Chiefs will probably leave for LA tomorrow midday. You get there, I don't know, that could get you there 24-ish hours before the game. I guess that Chris Jones could potentially fly out on Thursday if he were to send back 2 negative tests at some point here. But for that to happen, again, 24 hours apart, an enormous bug has flown into the studio.
I heard it.
That seems impossible.
I heard the buzz. Well, I heard.
Did you really?
I heard what sounded like a buzz. Did it go near the microphone?
It is currently on my face on the TV screen, which no one else can see, but I can see.
Did it fly right by you?
Yeah, it came right through.
I heard a buzz sound.
Wow.
So I feel like that's it. Maybe
I think it's actually just a shield bug that got very close to my face and is currently on my face on my screen in here. A lot of shield bug talk on this show as of late. They like coming into the studio. Anyway, it is a beautiful December 14th day outside, so we have the door open, which is pretty weird. Anywho, I love Drew Brees. So if Chris Jones was to send back 2 negative tests 24 hours apart, physically the latest I think he could do that would be, let's call it noon on Thursday. I don't know if that's realistic at all. I don't know if that's too late. I don't know if somebody with the Chiefs could get him on a jet on that short of notice. But if he sent back 1 negative test tomorrow morning, the window could be open. But he theoretically tested positive today, and I would say somewhere between 11 and 11:45 a.m., which seems like it'd be the window of his name being on that board to him being no longer on the board. So that's just the timeline. I would say that if he hasn't had 1 negative test by noon tomorrow, it seems impossible that he would be able to get to LA by kickoff. If he didn't have a negative test 4 hours after having a positive one, then he won't be able to make the team flight tomorrow. Now, if it were a false positive, maybe you turn around a negative test really quickly. Maybe that door stays open, but assuming it was not a false positive, and I would have to think that we would probably have heard that by now. If he tested again, it came back negative, and then the clock started ticking to have a second negative 24 hours later. I think we would probably be getting an inkling of that. You may have the hunch here of like, okay, but hold on, this is kind of convoluted, and it seems like there could be ways this could change. Absolutely. That would all be absolutely true. The thing that I'm most concerned about potentially changing is are we going to get news tomorrow morning that a bunch more Chiefs tested and a bunch more tested positive? And right now, we just don't know. This puts both of these teams, and it seems like with Rashawn Slater, I think that's it from the Chargers front. And when it was just Josh Gordon, I didn't get super nervous because there's no way to know, or at least very unlikely to find out exactly how somebody got it at this point. And then what is transmission amongst his teammates who are around him. Josh Gordon did the post-game press conference on Sunday. I mean, there was COVID in his body at that point, to my best understanding of how this works. There are all of these moving parts and all of these things we don't really know. Once you get to two guys, though, I start getting worried that you're going to get news like the Browns had today when they put 8 guys on their COVID list. I think the Lakers canceled the media availability in a practice or something. I think the Bulls had a couple of games postponed. Like, throughout sports and throughout the world, we're back at a point where you look over your shoulder and there's been another COVID thing. And for the Chiefs right now, I don't want to over-exaggerate here. I don't think that there could be a worse time in the regular season, and I don't think there could be a worse player to test positive on the Chiefs defense. Simply for their plans for Thursday. Because even as the Chiefs have won all of these games that they have won, and even as, in those 2 Raiders games, which we will go back and talk about the Raiders game some more. But even as you look at the Raiders game, you look at 6 wins in a row. The Raiders games, really, where it looks like the offense is clicking again. The other 4, not so much, but early on it was just getting dubs up there. They looked pretty good against the Broncos. They looked as an entire team. The Cowboys game, at least you knew they're a good football team. Whatever. That the last 4 games felt better than beating Daniel Jones and Jordan Love, right? In terms of like the Chiefs feeling like themselves. But even among that stretch, the Chiefs right now are 1 game up on the Chargers. And I mean, to be honest, like looking at the standings settling after the games on Sunday, that kind of felt wrong to me. And this is my job, and I'm watching the standings, and I was reading the standings and all of that. But I remember, the Chargers losing to the Vikings and the Broncos, and then they blow out the Bengals and blow out the Giants, and all of a sudden, they're back at 8-5 as the Chiefs are at 9-4. And obviously, if the Chiefs lose this game to the Chargers on Thursday night, not only do they even back up at the top of the AFC West, but the Chargers jump the Chiefs because they would have the 2-fold tiebreaker, beating the team twice. That would be a tough spot to find yourself after the last 2 months or so that this team has had. And so I don't think that it's over-exaggerating to say this is the Chiefs' game of the regular season. I won't say game of the year. I mean, not their game of 2020 either, or 2021. Good grief. We're talking about COVID, and I can't even remember what year it is. Not their biggest game of 2021 because there was a Super Bowl. I know we don't talk about it much, but there was one. But of this regular season, you could go back and say, hey, that opening stretch of Browns, Ravens, Chargers had some great matchups early on, and they were great. Ultimately, for the Chiefs, turnover filled and not terribly successful, but great games. Chiefs Bills in prime time should have been great. Wasn't. It was not great for a variety of reasons, including a halftime lightning delay. Not ideal. Even the Titans game, also a loss. Should have been great. Chiefs Packers should have been great. Aaron Rodgers wasn't there. But where these two teams stand right now, maybe I'm giving the Chargers too much credit, but because this would be very Chargery. But if the Chargers win this game on Thursday, they win the AFC West if they beat the Texans, Broncos, and Raiders. Broncos game is in LA. The other two they have on the road. The Chiefs win this game. They win the AFC West by getting through the Steelers, Bengals, and Broncos. Would leave the Chiefs with 4 losses. The Chargers would be down to 6 there. And really the Chiefs could actually lose one of those last 3, which, strangely, depending on how the AFC shakes out, maybe it even ends up in a place where they don't need that, Week 18, Game 17 slot against Denver. Maybe that game doesn't matter, and maybe you get yourself a little sort of faux bye week anyway. It depends on, obviously, what the Patriots do, and they won't know that, I don't think, until after they presumably beat the Steelers and Bengals if they get to that point. But the Chiefs winning this game gives them some margin for error and just about puts a bow on the AFC West. Kind of flips on its head if the Chargers take this game. It's huge. And now it sure looks like they're going to have to do it without Chris Jones. The wild thing, to pivot back to the game against the Raiders and the Chiefs putting up a hilarious, what was the final here? I got 89-23 final score on the Raiders this year. 89-23. When it also felt like they took their foot off the gas just a smidge late in the game, and including Chad Henne handing the ball to Derek Gore and then having him bust it to a 51, I think, yard touchdown run. I mean, impeccable rivalry-ing. Hilarious on a whole other level whenever we get to talk about pregame dancing and all of that. We'll talk. I also should mention this because we got 2 great guests tonight that you'll be very happy to hear from in the Chiefs world. We'll have our regular Tuesday chat with the one and only Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, the Times Czars podcast, and The Athletic. And we'll also talk to Craig Stout, one of the I don't know, what do you want to say, superstars of KC Sports Network. We'll talk to Seth at 8 and Craig at 9, and we'll spend plenty of time talking about the defense with and without Chris Jones. But even as I look at what this defense has done and the fact that I'm in terms of legitimacy here, I don't think it's fluky. I don't think that there are big questions you should still have about this unit at this point. I think it's legitimate. Maybe it's not going to be the best defense in football through the rest of the year and into the playoffs and to the Super Bowl. I don't know. But it's definitely good. And yet, if there was a way that you could make me nervous about them having a bad game in the worst time, it would be literally, you could create in a lab on the road, Thursday Night Football, Justin Herbert and the Chargers, and you've got to do it without Chris Jones. I'm narrowly leaning towards the Chiefs in this game, but I think this might have come up. Maybe this came up on the post-game show talking to our dear friend Matt Derrick. You could not put a team in a worse place just by purely like neutral, non-team related factors than to just say, go on the road on Thursday Night Football, good luck. But the fact that they're almost certainly, it seems, going to have to roll without Chris Jones is an enormous blow. Obviously, if it ends up being a false positive and he can somehow get that turned around in 48 hours or 24 hours or 24 and a half hours, then everything, you could exhale a huge, huge breath. But I don't know that you can do that right now because this was going to be tough. And now your most dominant defender is probably not going to be on that plane. It's interesting. It also stinks because I thought we were going to have a very fun show tonight of pointing and laughing about buses and pregame dances and cowardly field goals. And the Conor McGregor sound of, and I will go on extensively about all of those things. We will get there. But we had to start today with the fact that Chris Jones probably isn't going to be out there for the biggest game of the year for the Chiefs so far.
To be fair, half the NFL is not going to be out there this weekend.
True.
Because apparently half the NFL, tested positive for COVID this weekend. I was not prepared for the week 15 half the league test positive.
Yeah.
That was something I was kind of prepared, expecting, within the first few weeks, right? Like as everybody's still getting vaccinated, protocols, we're still kind of trying to get into the flow of things. I wasn't expecting that, hey, everything seems pretty good. And then really over the course of the last week, 2 weeks of the NFL season, but really just the, one calendar week, I've seen a lot of players test positive.
Adam Schefter tweeted just a little bit ago, thank you for talking long enough to let me get the tweet up, Rudy. You're a professional. NFL now has had 75 player positives for COVID the past 2 days per source. It's from Adam Schefter. And you're right, it's kind of, it's wild because this wasn't really a factor at least in Kansas City from week 2 to week, you would think by now I'd be more confident in the numbers I'm saying. Week 15 that we're in now, obviously Tyrann Mathieu missed the first game of the year because he had COVID. But from week 2 through week 15, it had not impacted the Chiefs. And at least until the last couple of weeks, it really had not been a major story in the NFL. Obviously, the last year, the Chiefs had, a Tuesday game? Did they get moved to Tuesday at one point?
Think so. They definitely had a different day.
Didn't the Bills get moved to Tuesday?
Well, was it the Patriots?
Well,
game?
they played the Patriots without Cam Newton, but I think that game only moved a little bit. I can't remember. I'll let you look it up, Rudy. Rudy's on the move. He got to his computer like a man on a mission. Here's the truth. I can't even tell you all of the things that were impacted by COVID just for the Chiefs last year. Guys who were on and off the list. Anthony Sherman was on there for a while and just sort of disappeared. They played the Patriots without Cam Newton, with Brian Hoyer.
That game was postponed. I'm just looking up. The first story I pulled up says it will be moved to either Monday or Tuesday. So I'm just
maybe
pulling
Chiefs
up to see
Patriots
if it
was Tuesday.
The Monday or Tuesday.
There were second Monday night games. Somebody played. There was a game every day of the week. I think the Steelers were the team that ended up playing on Wednesday. I kind of thought the Chiefs ended up on a Tuesday. Did they not?
Yeah, the Chiefs Patriots was on a Tuesday,
okay.
October 5th.
So, just playing Calvin ball with the schedule, right? The only rule is you can't make the same rule twice. That was the cardinal rule of Calvin ball, the fictional game from Calvin and Hobbes. Is that an old reference now? It's kind of. I don't think Calvin and Hobbes was really active even whenever I was reading the comics on a regular basis. I just have all the books.
Yeah, it's.
Oh,
I would say it's a pretty old reference, but I think everybody listening knows what Calvin and Hobbes is. But if there's, like my niece, my guess is she doesn't know what Calvin and Hobbes is.
Hold on, everybody. I'm having a quick crisis. Just give me 1 second, everybody, to see if let's go to the Wikipedia and yeah. So this is a factor of my is the factor of my dad having some of the books, I think, and maybe I always loved, I liked, my preference in terms of my love of comic books was actually books of comic strips, the treasuries and all of those things. I loved those. I still have a bunch of them. I haven't cracked them open in a while, but I love them all. I got the complete set of Calvin and Hobbes for a birthday or Christmas, probably around like age 13 or something. Wonderful. I mean, just, and the humor holds up for everybody. It's fabulous. Anyway, I love Calvin and Hobbes. But it did stop running on December 31st, 1995.
It definitely stopped earlier than I would. Like, my guess was it was definitely not in serialization when I was reading it,
Yeah.
right? Like, my guess is it had stopped even before I was reading it.
Yeah.
I just would have guessed maybe, like, a couple years. So maybe, like, the last time I probably, like, read it, where I was just like, this is my everything, where I was, like, renting it from the school library and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe like 12 to 13, so that's 2002, 2003. So my guess, I guess, probably would have been maybe about 2000 is when it stopped. You know, certainly the
Definitely
early 2000s.
pre 9/11.
Yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes never had. You would
No.
remember. You would remember if Calvin and Hobbes had like a 9/11 strip or something,
For sure.
right? You know, like a very heavy kind of deal. Because they would. I think Bill
man.
Waters probably would have.
Calvin Hobbes. I used to check that out from like the library all the time. Sit
But
on the bus.
it did
ride home
end-
and read it.
It ended shortly after my first birthday.
Yeah, it checks out. It's a great
See, I
comic
think-
book strip.
You mentioned the library. I'm sure I checked out books from the library, and also it was a good, like, my mom and I used to go to garage sales all the time. I am confident that was a thing to keep an eye out for at a garage sale. I couldn't even
'Cause-
put my finger on exactly how it all began, but I
Like
love
all-
Calvin and Hobbes and all the kids. These damn kids these days.
They don't know about Calvin Hobbes because our library had, like, you know, the volumes essentially, right? So like you got a bunch of the comic strips in
Yes.
one book. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, it was great
That was I did read the news, the funnies,
for sure.
but those the what did you just call them? You just had a better word, the word that I couldn't.
Serialization,
No, of the
comic book
books.
strips,
No.
volumes.
I think it was having the volumes of it. And again, I think if it's all Sunday ones, it's technically a treasury, or at least that's how I think Calvin and Hobbes and Foxtrot and Pearls Before Swine all did it. Those are my favorites. Pearls Before Swine is still running. I think Foxtrot just does Sundays. This is insane to me. I don't think my weird, deep, niche love of comic strips, not books, but strips, often in the form of books, I don't think we've ever actually scratched that surface on this show. And we did it just now because I was referencing Calvin Ball and then realizing that even people our own age would have very few reasons to just passively know about Calvin Ball. And now this is the oldest I've ever felt. Let's take a break. I'm gonna go sit in silence, I think, for a little while.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page.
Well, guys, you did it again. Even though Christmas is on the same date every year, you got busy, and now it's crunch time. And you got nothing for her.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Can I tell you the secret on this, and then we can talk about other stuff?
Can I tell you something too? Last night.
What?
Like last.
You can't play an Uno reverse card on me.
Yeah.
What?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I love it whenever the liners really catch me off guard like that. That's a great one. What the hell happened there, Rudy? Do you remember what you were so excited to tell me?
Not at all.
Hey, man, can I tell you something? No, but I can tell you something. What?
I just know all I remember is that whatever you were saying reminded me of something that I meant to tell you, and it was just like, oh, here we go. Snowball.
Fantastic. My goodness. Let's first of all, a couple things here from the Twitch. I always like to remind people of this, just because look, if you listen to the show live or you listen to it on the podcast feed, and that's what works for you, thank you for doing that. That's how I listen to most of the shows that I listen to, even if they are streaming in video form. Totally get it. But if there is a particular day that maybe you're set up at your computer, you want to pull up the stream of this show and actually watch it, like today, maybe you get a little Easter egg. Like I wore my new T-shirt that I got at the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. He will be in my Shot Clock reviews. Salvador Dali will be in my Shot Clock reviews whenever we do it. I think the entire man, maybe the museum, maybe this particular piece that's on my shirt. I'm not sure. I haven't figured it all out yet, but it'll be there. You can actually watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch pages. And also, maybe most fun, you can also interact with other people who are watching and listening to the stream, which creates a very fun little space where people like Beaktor714 can say, Chris Jones or not, I'm not ready for those frustrating Keenan Allen third down conversions. Me neither. Or like Pew Pew ICU says they can't wait to see all the red in the stands. I just read the first two comments at the top of my screen in here, but those are the two that I saw, and the conversation you can join in on.
Peter had a good one. I don't know why we're all worried about Chris Jones when we're gaining our best pass rusher back, L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah, you know what? I actually should mention that. Andy Reid did say today, he did not practice today, but he did say that L'Jarius Sneed was returning to Kansas City, I believe was the phrase. So it does seem like he will likely be back on Thursday. He won't have practiced in about a week, which is usually not something that Andy Reid wants guys to play after. So I'm not sure how much we'll see L'Jarius Sneed if he is with the team. And also, Rashad Fenton was in a limited role, but was active after his injury against the Raiders. And you saw, your Mike Hughes. Your Mike Hughes bleeping like invincibility game, much less breakout game, podium game. Mike Hughes opened the game with a defensive touchdown and then followed it up by 2 punch-outs. Anyway, I think you'll see plenty of him and Baker again. Although the biggest difference that Sneed would probably make if he is able to return and play a decent amount schematically is you got a very high dosage of Dan Sorensen and I think 100% of Juan Thornhill on Sunday, and you'll even hear me say that's pretty much fine because Tyrann Mathieu needed to play up in the slot a lot more and was able to do that whenever, obviously without Sneed being there. I wouldn't hate seeing more of Armani Watts here, and that's fine. Dan Sorensen was fine. This is not a pick at anybody. Just to note, you would probably see less of Sorensen and more of Mathieu playing more of his typical role if Sneed is able to play a decent amount. But we'll see. Maybe Sneed only plays sub packages. I don't know. I'm shooting from the hip on that one. That's still going to be against the Chargers maybe 80% of the time. I don't know. But I hope we get to see L'Jarius Sneed again. Do you have another comment, Rudy, or did that one just leap out to you?
I mean, that was one I thought was pretty funny. I noticed people earlier. Pew Pew also said, basically, I think this kind of goes off what you said in the first hour on how this very well. He at the very least said whoever wins this game will win the division. I will say, if you told me, if the Chargers win this game, they obviously have the tiebreaker, so you have to finish a whole game better than them.
Yes.
I will say, if you told me the Chiefs lost this game and then won out, and you told me the Chargers won this game and then also lost the game the rest of the way, wouldn't be stunned.
Yeah.
So, like, if the Chiefs win this game, it absolutely wins it for them. Like the division, it's
just about wrapped because they would have that one game of wiggle room. Yeah.
But if the Chiefs lose this game, it makes it very difficult The Chargers are also the Chargers. If you told me they lost a game, if the Chiefs won out and the Chargers slipped up somewhere the rest of the way, again, makes your margin of error insanely small, because if you're the Chiefs, you have to win out, because the odds of the Chargers losing 2 games the rest of the way seem unlikely. But I do think that if the Chiefs can lose this game and still come away with the division, but again, very unlikely. If you want the 1 seed, you have to win this game. The reality is, if you want the 1 seed, you probably have to go undefeated, because it's just the odds of losing this game and then having everybody else lose multiple games is, I mean, the AFC's been weird this year, but I don't think it's that weird.
That's a cold, hard point by Rudy Salazar here on Almost Entirely Sports. Brought to you by. I didn't get to open my drink during the commercial break, and I was waiting for a comedically relevant time to do it, and I felt like I was an exclamation
That's
point on
pretty
your
good.
point there, Rudy. I feel like I did my best.
It was very good.
I'm really at a. Oh boy, this smells delicious. Hold on.
It looks good.
Oh man. So, if you don't know, I have diabetes now. It's fine. I mean, it's not good, but it's better than it was before I knew I had it. Better to know you got it, right? You know, that's really the argument that John Harbaugh was making this weekend. Better to go for, you got to go for 2 early, because better to know that you've got the points diabetes than not know you have the points diabetes. That wasn't even a segue. That's just a genuine thought. But better to know what you got in your hand. But so I've been, for the last now almost coming up on 3 months. Wow. The last 2.5 months especially, there's some things you just can't, it just doesn't make any sense to eat or drink anymore. Like, I've had 1 small portion of rice in the last 2.5 months, because rice is good, I guess, but it's not all that insulin good. It's just not worth it for me. That's fine. Also, cauliflower rice is actually really good.
This is like,
I'm a big fan.
Yeah. No. This is like a thing that I just don't think people necessarily talk about enough. Cauliflower just as a substitute for grains. Yeah. It's not just like, oh, the healthy alternative. You're like, hey, it's not bad. No, it's legitimately great. Like
I enjoy it a lot.
Chipotle for a while had rice, cauliflower rice.
Yeah.
It was just a limited time thing. And I miss it so much.
Yeah, and I would say that was
so
not
good.
that was nowhere near the best cauliflower rice that's out there.
Absolutely.
But I would appreciate it if they
cauliflower
brought
as
it
a
back.
wheat replacement is fantastic.
Yeah, it cauliflower rice, absolutely a legitimately good thing.
I've had cauliflower, essentially pizza, right? Pizza crust.
Yep, the crust, sure.
Great. It's very good.
Yeah, we had a cauliflower-based pizza crust that was also very good. But the sort of I don't know, maybe the slightly more fun experimental side is like, there's just no reason to drink anything with sugar in it for me at this point. I really enjoy a good, Dr. Pepper here and there, an energy drink of sorts. I mostly ended up getting the sugar-free ones anyway. But it's been a little bit of a journey. The real loss, the one loss I do mourn, other than my pancreas, that's not true. It's still in there, and actually, fun fact, still doing most of its job, just not the insulin to offset to work with your carbs.
That
part.
One thing it doesn't do is just a very important thing.
It turns out it's an important thing.
Turns out, when I do 90% of my job,
You're pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
When any of your organs only do 90% of their job, you might die.
Yeah.
Your organs got some stress because they have to be working at 98% efficiency at all time. Because if they drop to 90, you're in a hospital fighting a guard.
That's
it's just how it goes.
You might have thought that's a funny exaggeration for Rudy to do. No, that happened. If you wanted that story, you can go listen to the first episode after I got out of the hospital. You can go get that backstory. That's in the catalog. But one of the fun things has been I'm trying lots of different drink substitutes and everything. Oh, the one loss other than my pancreas, lemonade. I like lemonade.
Very sugary though.
Very sugary, and other than Chick-fil-A's diet lemonade, most of the diet lemonades are or the zero sugar lemonades or whatever are not quite there. Gotta keep trying new ones. But like Costco has I'm gonna blow by some shot clock reviews here, unfortunately. Costco's got a great diet green tea. And this is Quick Trip's super, I don't know why it's super, that feels new. Super Rooster Booster Light. It's the Quick Trip like energy drink. They have it on faucet.
Fountain.
On fountain.
On tap. You could say.
I was going to, but I thought, I don't think that's a tap.
It's
I
not
literally was going to say
technically- yeah.
they have it on tap.
I think you could say it's on tap and people would understand what you mean, but it's not.
fountain-
It's not technically on tap. Yeah.
Fountain is the right word. You had that right. And I will get it in that, but I got a couple of cans of it today because I was in and out. I wasn't going to drink it. I was saving it for showtime. And Rooster Booster as a sort of cherry-based energy drink of sorts, it's pretty good. Enjoy it. It's not shot clock review worthy, but just I'm drinking it during the show, and I'm easily distracted by shiny things.
I'll update that to my part tomorrow. By the way, I've got plenty of stuff to add there. So
Yeah, I think.
if I don't know what our show looks like tomorrow night yet, but if you want to do it, we can do it.
Okay.
I'll update it. Point being,
I've got a lot of shot clock content. We might not make an effort to hit it really until next week because we're both out on Friday and.
I'm out all next week.
Oh really?
Yeah, you're not. I'm out till the 26th. I'm out from
Oh.
Chiefs game
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
you mentioned that. All right, I'm gonna have to.
So as of once Friday,
What's
gets
Beards
here,
up to?
Dead. That's what he's up to. Yeah, starting on Friday, I will only work 2 days. The rest of the, I guess 3 days if you count a Chiefs game. The rest of the year.
That's really exciting.
2 weekdays, 1 weekend.
Yeah. I'm gonna just go back to Twitch here. Ice Power asks if G Fuel spikes my blood sugar. I actually haven't had any since I got out of the hospital. I don't think any of that was G Fuel's fault. In fact, I know for a fact none of that was G Fuel's fault. But it was just one of those things where I was like doing some habit reassessment.
Yeah.
And I just haven't mixed one up yet, this might be the first like can of energy drink that I have bought in 3 months also. But it says it's sugar free. So I think theoretically G Fuel's fine. G Fuel and I are not broken up. We're just taking a break and seeing other energy drinks right now.
I and Solidarity have done similar things. I am drinking G Fuel occasionally, but much, much less, and usually not afternoon.
And
usually it's like if I have one, it's just like I'm dragging in the morning, so I'll mix one up.
That
but
seems okay.
I'm trying to not drink any more caffeine, like really later in the day. Thursday night doesn't count though, because we're gonna be working until like 2 a.m.
Rudy, in solidarity with me, also, I told him not to do this, just took a big pin and jabbed it where he thought his pancreas was. And it wasn't.
It's healthy.
It's not how that works.
It's helping me lose weight.
Rudy, in solidarity with me, actually took my insulin pen out of my backpack and jabbed a needle I had already used
It was my booster shot.
into his heart, which is not where you put insulin.
Aaron Rodgers told me just do this for a booster and it's fine, okay? I have to listen to athletes. This is a sports show, Josh. I'm required by law.
I thought it went from solidarity to selfishness.
They're not boosters. Don't listen to me.
I thought it went
I'm
from
not a doctor.
I thought it went from solidarity to selfishness whenever you took my emergency Reese's cup that I keep on me at all times in case I have a blood sugar crash, and you ate it because you said you wanted to support me.
I was craving a little chocolate.
That at least was the truth, We're going to take another break. We'll talk to Seth Keysor in about 10 minutes. We'll talk about something else whenever we come back.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
This is a weird thing for me to have just found out, but apparently this happened while we were doing Chiefs posts on Sunday, and my brain sometimes turns off anything that's not Chiefs related whenever that's happening. But Baylor beat Villanova 57-36. Villanova was the number 6 team in the nation at the time. It's on my TV in here on a replay on ESPNU. Baylor gave up 36 points to the 6th-ranked team in basketball.
And they lost 4 starters from their last year's national championship team. They are replacing 4 starters.
Scott Drew was a dork like 5 years ago.
And I think unrightfully so.
Yeah. I'm not sure that that's fair, but that was sort of the perception.
Absolutely was. Can't win the big game. Not, a fine coach, but not good.
And I know that a lot of college basketball lovers are within the sound of my voice right now, and I totally respect that. But 36 points in a basketball game is not enough for me to watch it. I love March, but I'll wait till football season's over to get really into college basketball. Seth Keysor next.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
ESPN Radio.
Now it is time for very serious football talk with a man who hates money almost as much as he hates the idea of a healthy sleep schedule.
You will find Seth Keysor everywhere except for in his or your bed, because not only does he not sleep, he's also a faithful husband. So that's important.
The man who has so many children, his wife figured he wouldn't even notice if she bought a few chickens and ducks for the backyard.
We should have an episode where we just have my children appear on the show
I would
in
love.
ascending order. So we'll do like a minute of Lucas, then 2 minutes of Isabel, then 3 minutes of... Man, I have a lot of kids.
The man who does all of this while being a lawyer in a state that has snow all 12 months of the year.
Until it freezes, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I actually felt very at home driving through southern Iowa. It was snow everywhere, and people were slowing down to like 40. It was adorable. I was driving slowly, but I literally was hanging my head out the window screaming, and that was disconcerting.
It's Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, The Athletic, and the Times Hours podcast on Almost Entirely Sports.
Honestly, I am pretty happy and pretty surprised to be having this conversation right now with our dear friend Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, The Athletic, the Times Ours podcast. I'm always happy to talk to you, Seth, but I'm surprised to talk to you because I thought that there was less than a 50 but more than a 10% chance that you were going to throw your phone into the ocean in Florida and just never be heard from again. So I'm glad to have you back in my life, but I hope that you've returned to Minnesota without too much, I don't know, weather shock or whatever it would be.
You know, it's out of the question that I would throw my phone in the ocean, but only because this wonderful, crazy, sometimes frustrating, sometimes awesome job is part of my hope to one day live by the ocean. And so we'll see how it goes. My wife is still right now looking at properties in Florida.
Wow.
So we'll see. She and I have had a wonderful conversation about the fact that I'm sure living in Florida is very different from vacationing in Florida.
Yeah,
vacation is not like real life.
Right,
you know?
right. But I could also get you the info to my mom, and let her tell you about how hard it is living by the ocean. Because that's what they did. We vacationed down there a few times, and then they're like, let's just move. And they did. And I've not gotten from them any big regrets about living by water and not by snow anymore. They seem pretty happy with that particular choice.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't surprise me. That would be their choice on that, or their decision, their thoughts on. Man, I'm really a wordsmith today.
Yeah, you're crushing.
I'm just coming back. I'm coming back off of IR. I was designated to return. I'm back, but I'm still getting my feet under me.
This is what I would expect. That sort of kind of brain catching up to your mouth kind of thing that I know nothing about. That kind of mechanism there is exactly what I would expect from someone who just went from 75 degrees and beaches to Minnesota. Like you're slowly kind of refreezing after defrosting for a couple of weeks, and I think that's totally reasonable. My pitch. And, I'm pretty sure that maybe we get the sales team here to help us with this, and then I could probably get the all clear from 810, is that we just get, basically a Big Brother house somewhere by a beach, and we just fill it with USB video cameras and all sorts. We can just stream the whole thing. We have a studio built in. We've got different places we can write. We can do the show. We can just do it on remote every day. We can get all that sponsored. We put a big sponsor. Your ad here is on every wall of the house. And I think that, for the 3 months that we would get past before eventually one of us completely lost it, I think we could make some really good content and also be by sand.
I think I consider me sold.
Okay, all right.
I want to be on a pier somewhere fishing, and that's just what I would like to do. And it's we'll see. Maybe one day. I did have people rightly point out to me. I think I tweeted out, I was like, could 100,000 people just subscribe already? And I will write 2 articles a day. I will do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I will provide the best content ever. Just let me live here instead. Or at least be a snowbird, you know? I mean, that's what we call them in Minnesota. People that, you know, they live in Minnesota during the spring and summer, fall months, and then the 6 months of winter or longer, they live in Florida or Arizona or whatever. And the longer I live here, the more I'm like, you know what? That's kind of the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so the correct response someone had for me, though, said, yeah, it's kind of going to make the name of your newsletter a little weird.
That's fair. That's a good point.
The chief of the north from Florida.
The chief in the north of the equator, I think, works just fine.
Yeah, that seems easy enough.
Yeah, that's basically true. Well, if you want to help Seth achieve his basically Jersey Shore-esque dreams, you can go subscribe to the newsletter at mnchiefsfan.substack.com. He'd get there a lot quicker if he wasn't charging $12 a year forever as the price that you could pay to get some of the best content you'll get anywhere around the Kansas City Chiefs. But that's what the price is, and I'll tell you this, if you love anyone in your life, you'll get them a subscription for Christmas or your favorite holiday, whatever it is. My birthday's before Christmas. I don't need an extra subscription for Seth. Actually, in fact, I'm giving one away on Twitter if you want to do that. You can go enter there. But more importantly, just go do it yourself. It's $12 for an entire year, and if you use that same link, bit.ly/SethReallyHatesMoney, you can subscribe with someone else's email, and have it sign up for them, and tell them happy holidays from the Chief of the North newsletter, and you can give a legitimately great gift that will last an entire year that takes up 0 physical space in that person's life. You can give that great gift for $12. As I'm talking about this, Seth, I'm realizing how smart of an idea this is.
I'm just saying, I'm going to say this like right here on the radio where you currently work. The Chief in the North featuring Josh Briscoe doesn't sound too terrible. You're asking me.
I mean, I'm just here to be a spokesperson. This is an almost entirely sports crossover episode sort of thing because I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I make sense of all of this crazy world for people to go get a great Christmas gift, and then you tell me how good Frank Clark has been. That's the back and forth here. That's how the sausage is made.
Oh, you know what? I think I can do that. A little bit of quid pro quo,
yeah,
as it were.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's allowed or not, but I think it is.
Yeah, why not? It's Latin, so I'm sure it's okay. So it is. So obviously, the first thing I wrote about this week, and probably I'll only have time to do one more article before the Thursday night game because it's a big one. I'll have time to review Mahomes' snaps, but that's it. Is I reviewed every snap of Frank Clark against the Raiders, which you were no doubt alluding to there. Mm-hmm. And he was good. He was really good. And it's been one of the most dramatic turnarounds that I've ever seen for a player.
Yeah, and so I want to know what you think goes into that. And also, I'm at this point, people almost certainly know. Chris Jones going to the COVID list today with the biggest game of the year, at least with what we know at this point coming up on Thursday. If Chris Jones, and it seems wildly unlikely that he would play at this point, if he were to miss the game, it puts even more pressure, no pun intended, on the rest of those guys to be able to create pressure. And presumably, with what you saw against the Raiders, Frank Clark has been up for that task this year. So walk me through a little bit of what you thought you were seeing from Frank Clark before you did kind of the deep dive from the Raiders game and why you make that point about the turnaround. And then I want to know what you saw against Vegas.
Sure. So the thing with Clark, and he's gotten a lot of flack, and I don't think there's really any need to walk your dear listeners through everything that's gone on with Frank Clark over the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. 2020 was kind of a down year for him. He was maybe an average type player in terms of impacting the pass rush. But the biggest thing was, for me, he just looked like a different player. And you and I have talked about that before, and I didn't mean that as a colloquialism, but he's just like a different guy. No, he literally was playing like a different player. Mm. He didn't have nearly as much explosion off the line, and he wasn't playing with nearly as much functional strength, which was his bread and butter in Seattle. When you watch his film, he had really good functional strength. He had a really good long arm, really good bull rush, and he had good explosion off the line. And that combination of things allowed him to make up for the fact that he doesn't have a ton of bend. He's got a little, and he's got good bounce through contact, which is another thing you need to turn the edge. But he's not a super bendy athlete, and he's not an incredible athlete. And so that first step explosion off the line allowed him to at least threaten the edge, and then his unusual strength allowed him to win with a variety of power moves, and then he built a bunch of counters around that, right? His spin move, his push-pull. These things were all built around the threat of the long arm or the bull rush or the occasional just rip around the edge. And we just weren't seeing it. He became a really, really good pass rusher by being a very varied pass rusher, but it was all built around that power and that first step explosion, and we just haven't seen much of that until suddenly we saw it for a stretch of 2019, right? And then 2020 was a down year. Start off this year was rough. He had a press conference where, and you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah,
he was very open about the physical and mental struggles he's had this year. And in my opinion, maybe even last year, he talked about that he'd never really been hurt before his whole career, and that it was hard for him to not just try to play through the injuries and understand that maybe he was hurting the team by playing unhealthy. And based on the way he's playing now, my response would be, yes, I agree. If that was what kept you from getting fully healthy and playing like this, that was hurting the team a little bit. But now, over the last, I'd say, month and a half, he really does look like a different player from how he's looked from 2020 on, and he looks a lot more like how he looked in 2018 in Seattle.
It's funny. I'm glad that you specifically mentioned that all the things that we talked about whenever they did make the trade for Clark. I remember asking him about it in his introductory press conference after the press conference, but like we have a little video that I found as I was going through a bunch of photos and videos and freeing up some space the last couple of days. I was like, oh yeah, that's when I talked to Frank Clark, like day one in Kansas City. And one of the things I asked him about was one of the things that you had talked and written about that you and I had discussed was that varied set of what he was able to do to make things really difficult for the tackles he'd be going up against. And going through this piece from the Raiders game, you were just rattling off, here's the power, the strong arm, or the push-pull, or the occasional rip around the edge. And you've got an example, I think, of all of the things that you mentioned, or very close to all the things that you mentioned, just from this game, which really does make me feel like there's something sustainable about this. This isn't some sort of fluky return to form for Frank Clark, but this is actually like more of what you saw in Seattle.
Right. And part of that would be that it's been multiple games in a row that he's been playing better, right? And people have noticed. And so that is one reason why, you might think it's more sustainable. But like you said, it's the manner in which it was done that you would at least make you think it's sustainable. And the fact that it was against quality competition. Now, the fact that it's Colton Miller actually makes this interesting. So one of the games that I reviewed from 2018 when Clark signed with the Chiefs, from when he was still in Seattle, was a game against Colton Miller. And he just dominated him, just destroyed him. It wasn't even close. It was actually really hysterical. And Miller really struggled in 2018. In 2019, Clark had a couple of pretty good games against Miller. 2020 did not perform well against him. And earlier this year didn't really have a particular breakout game against him or anything like that. But Miller has become, in the meantime, in the intervening years, a good left tackle. It's kind of like what happened with Bowles in Denver, right? They both started off their career really rough, and they've both developed into pretty good left tackles. I would put both of them maybe in that close to that, like Eric Fisher tier, good, not great players, right? And he was able to beat him in a variety of ways over the course of the game, to the point that the Raiders really had to start sending a lot of chips, a lot of help his way. And Spagnuolo then had some adjustments, like on one particular play, a spin move that everyone oohed and awed about, lining up Melvin Ingram outside of Clark to kind of force them to try to figure out how to defend, the B gap. And that's what Clark attacked with a great spin move that just sent Miller sprawling. So despite them trying to do these things, he was still able to make an impact. And so it looks sustainable, certainly, because he won in all these ways that make him certainly look physically healthy. I think for Chiefs fans, because it's been such a sustained period of time since we've seen Clark perform at this level, and I would argue the current level he's playing at Even his stretch in 2019, I'm not sure was quite as good consistently as what he's doing here. That was a lot of the same stuff, but it was a lot of motor too. And that was another reason why he was always good, is really high motor, right?
Yeah.
Just played, just never stopped, relentless. I would say this is the best ball he's been playing. And so for Chiefs fans, it's really easy to wait for that to end. But if it really has been a health thing and an issue, including, mental health, trying to deal with some of the other stuff going on, this might be sustainable. And if that's the case, then Brett Veach's vision for the defense can actually become what it was supposed to be.
Right.
Which is based around Clark and Jones's skill set with Tyrann Mathieu on the backside. Except now they also have guys like Juan Thornhill and L'Jarius Sneed and Melvin Ingram and Willie Gay Jr. and a lot of really solid supporting cast.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so funny talking about this defense now. The potential ceiling for it feels very different than how it did, earlier in the season when they were playing like really, really poor football.
Mm-hmm.
Even like then when we were like, well, we don't think they'll be this bad all year, but it was still like, their ceiling is an average defense.
Yes. Oh, no, I mean, and go ahead.
No, I just was going to say they've obviously broke through that already, and his play was part of why I assumed their ceiling was average, because I didn't anticipate Clark being able to push himself back to this level.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was thinking about everything defensively. I wrote a little thing on Arrowhead Report that went up this morning. I was working on last night about what actually did we think that the turnaround for the defense could look like. And I do think that there was some realm of believability on the idea that they would get to an average defense partway through or late into the season, that there would be some stabilization there. But it being this actually good is not something that I was considering. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you have a little bit of hesitance about just going like, yeah, this is who Frank Clark is from this point forward. And I don't know if that's from something specifically that you're seeing or from you not wanting to make, an overreaction snap judgment of some sort. Is there a little bit of hesitance? Do you need to see it a few more games, or where are you at in terms of that?
This is one of the things that was so frustrating when dealing with Clark's struggles last year and to start this year. And then he obviously had injury issues in 2019. I think he was a good player when he was healthy in 2019. Mm-hmm. He was so consistent in Seattle. Mm. From his rookie year where he was good to 2016, 2017, 2018, he was very good. He was a very good overall player. He was consistent. And then, he came to Kansas City, and then what you saw was something, and that was one of the things where I viewed him as kind of a safe guy to trade for, because he's been who he was year after year after year. This wasn't like a D Ford situation, right, to where he struggled with injuries, and which affected his play, and then had one really good pass rushing year and has struggled with injuries since then. Clark has been incredibly consistent. And so with all of that, this really appears to be a return to who he was for literally 3 straight years prior to coming to Kansas City. It's just so rare that you see a player recapture that form. And so that's where my hesitancy comes from. Yeah. It really isn't based on anything. I mean, he's only 28, right? I mean, these are his peak years. 28, about 26 through 30 is probably, maybe 31 is what you think of as like an edge rusher's peak years. And so there's no reason to think that his play should just fall off a cliff again if it really was a health thing. The problem is I can't figure out if it really was a health thing, and that sounds like what he was intimating earlier this year. And so for me, if I keep seeing it for the rest of the season, I will become convinced that it really was just a health thing this whole time, and that would explain the change in play style as well. But, yeah, the hesitancy is because the lackluster play, and I think he would say that by his standards, because he seems to be a guy who holds himself to high standards. His play was lackluster by his standards. It lasted for a pretty long period of time.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to see at least close to that amount of time before your confidence gets restored, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he also there was like the numbness in the hand thing from a pinched nerve or whatever, and the stomach stuff. I think he lost like 20 pounds or something. So, I mean, I do think there's a through line there, but I also think that just sort of, if not skepticism, just waiting for a little more information there makes sense. I thought I heard that in there, and I wanted to get it out. I wanted to hear from it. The last time you wrote about Chris Jones, like, in depth specifically about him, was after the Cowboys game, which, of course, if you are a new subscriber to the Chief in the North newsletter, maybe this goes without saying, maybe not. It's okay if you don't get it in your email for a certain day. You can go to the mnchiefsfan.substack.com URL. If you're a subscriber, you can go through all of the things in the archives as well, if you're looking for a little holiday reading. But you wrote about Chris Jones there. I don't want to get necessarily all the way into what you wrote specifically from the Cowboys game, but I am interested, as maybe one of Kansas City's biggest advocates for Chris Jones as a human wrecking ball, what you think it would mean if he can't go on Thursday, in part, for the unit as a whole, and how the Chargers try to account for guys like Frank Clark. If Chris Jones isn't out there, what changes defensively?
I mean, he's irreplaceable, right? I mean, you cannot. He is the best non-Aaron Donald interior pass rusher in the NFL. He's one of the best 5 to 7 pass rushers in the NFL. You can't replace that, right? In the Raiders game, as good as Clark was, Jones was a little better, and that's how good Jones is game after game after game. He completely wrecks defensive game plans, or offensive game plans, and every now and then, and you and I have talked about this. One of the things that makes him so valuable is there are 3 or 4 snaps a game that he completely ruins for an offense, single-handedly. And some people would be like, well, 3 or 4 out of 60, that's not that many. That's an incredibly large number to be able to individually, and to do it week after week after week after week, right? Sometimes he does it a few more. Like against the Cowboys, it was like 12. That game was incredible. But he does that, and he's a guy who also does it on a higher percentage on third down. And there are multiple times where he stops drives with singular efforts. You're not going to replace that. It becomes much more important that Clark keep up the level of play he's showing, especially with Slater potentially out as well.
Right.
Slater's been playing awesome left tackle for the Chargers. Their depth behind him is not remotely as good. And so if Clark can dominate his matchup, it doesn't matter as much. Pass rush is still a sum of the parts, and if Ingram and Clark both play really well, and then you maybe have Jarran Reed, who's quietly been playing better after a pretty tough start to the season, not nearly the improvement we've seen from Clark, but there's been better play there, then you can still have a good pass rush on the day. But it does lower the ceiling, barring like a massive breakout game from Trishawn Wharton or some incredible game plan from Spags. Because I just don't know if Justin Herbert is a guy you want to try to blitz into oblivion, given the arm talent that he's shown and the receiving weapons that he has. So you can't replace him, but it does make Clark's resurgence all the more important.
I think this might be the longest we've ever gone talking about the defense in a positive, wholly positive way. But I do want to hear, outside of the pass rush, whenever you look, because we haven't done this show super consistently for a little bit here on a Tuesday. So whenever you look at everything else that has been a part of the turnaround, what's your next favorite part, your next favorite element of the defense that we saw, now on this stretch of just holding teams to single digits on a regular basis, as opposed to the version that we were seeing and screaming about earlier in the season?
There's obviously so much to like. I think if I were going to pick one, even though it's not the most important, I think the consistent improvement in the run defense and defending the sidelines has been fun. Because that's what you asked, right? It was fun.
Sure, yeah.
And so it is the run game is more psychologically damaging than it actually damages the game. Like, we know this, depending on the game plan, and insert all the caveats there, right?
Yes.
Where there are individual situations, et
disclaimer
cetera.
here, yeah.
But watching your team get run on consistently is not fun to watch.
Yeah.
Watching the other team hand the ball off and knowing that it's probably going to gain at least 5 or 6 yards, that is a bummer. And it's no fun. But watching your team stuff a run, and you can see why, from the emotional standpoint, why the importance of it was overemphasized for a while. Because a stuffed run is such a positive play.
Right.
It's like, hey, you try to play and it went nowhere,
right,
and your guys got buried, and we stood you up on the line, all that stuff.
It's not as satisfying as a maybe slightly hurried quarterback who misses a pass by a little bit. Same physical result, but
exactly. It feels very different because of the teamwork required to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think also I would include that part because, like I said, defending the sidelines, it includes the physicality and speed of Willie Gay Jr., who I believe I might need to write about him again. I actually wrote about him. This one's free, actually.
Yes, this is there for everyone on the Chief from the North newsletter. He's basically giving away most of his content. He's literally giving away this piece on Willie Gay.
And so I called it shrinking the field and just noted that Gay is doing more than people realize in the fact that his speed, his sideline-to-sideline speed, has helped erase, not completely eradicate because of the roles they're having everyone play, but has helped erase a very specific weakness of teams doing a lot of quick throws, testing the sidelines, and getting very easy yards on the Chiefs. Those easy yards against the Chiefs have mostly vanished over the course of the last, month and a half, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean teams never move the ball. It doesn't mean the Chargers won't move the ball. I think they will. They're a gifted team. But generally speaking, the first 5 or 6 games of the year, teams were moving the ball easily. Short passes to the sidelines were gaining 10, 15 yards. Those rollouts with a tight end pulling across the line was good for 15 yards of play. I literally wondered to myself, I was like, why doesn't some team just run that play 6 times in a row?
Yeah, just see what
to
happens.
See if they could defend it once.
Yeah.
And Philly basically did at times.
Yep.
So watching them really improve in those areas that they've struggled, the tackling being so good. I mean, that has been really fun, close to the line of scrimmage and on the sidelines, because it's become, over the last 6 weeks, it's become more like on a defensive snap, you're starting to expect something good to happen as opposed to dreading something bad happening. And I think that shallow portion of the field in those sidelines is a big part of that.
I'm glad that you got there because I did have the Willie Gay story open in a tab whenever I asked you that question, kind of rooting for an answer that would get us there. Because I just think that if you just haven't looked at the GIFs, go to this story and look at the GIFs of Willie Gay looking faster than anyone else on the Chiefs defense, or at least anyone in the middle of the field has been in a very long time. It's just fun. It looks like all of my love of football on some level, I think ultimately still to this day gets viewed through the lens of NFL Street 2 on the GameCube. And I'm telling you, man, Willie Gay plays like he's got a little bit of a game breaker, at least a turbo button, and it's just wonderful.
Absolutely. Inside linebacker is one of those positions that it's not terribly difficult to find and scheme up decent play that doesn't sink your defense, but it is a position to where exceptional play or really fast play, you can really add a lot to your defense there.
Yeah.
And that's something that they're finding with Willie Gay Jr., who I think he's got an incredibly high ceiling.
Let's talk about the offensive side a little bit here because that's where we've spent a lot of our usual conversation time. The Chiefs are in a very funny place right now where I think that as you've seen the defensive evolution / revolution coming together, the Chiefs have had really 2 good offensive games or two offensive performances that felt good, at least to be more subjective about it, and both of them were against the Raiders. So you see Raiders effort 1, we've talked about that plenty, but then you get Sunday and you get the last several games all together. Where are you at right now on the offense as a whole, and also in terms of the things that had been going wrong that you think were the most important to now? Is this finally whenever everything clicks together and we're going to see them do it again on Thursday? Or are the Raiders again going to be kind of the blip on the radar?
I've thought about this a lot, right? Because obviously they've had 2 dominant offensive performances against the Raiders. And really, let's be honest, they weren't even trying in the fourth quarter against the Raiders, even before they replaced everyone this last time. Yeah. I think they could have hung 60 or 70 on them.
If this was for a BCS ranking, however long ago that was still a thing, they could have put up 60 or 70. Yeah, I think you're right. If they needed style points.
Yeah,
which should be the tiebreaker, by the way. Instead of AFC record, why don't you do style points, and then the Chiefs would definitely have the tiebreaker over the Patriots.
They would win so much because their style points are so much better. But I think it's important to me. The bigger difference in the Chiefs game against the Raiders To me, so there's a couple things going on here. So if you look at like their wins against Dallas and Denver, they put up 22, they put up 19. Green Bay, they put up 13. One difference that people would talk about, it's like, oh, this cover two. Honestly, Denver played more cover two than the Raiders did. But go back and look at the Chiefs cover two stats in previous years with Mahomes and Reed. It's not like this is anything new. Right. They've seen it before. To me, I think people are doing a little too much correlation versus causation, because to me, what you ought to do is, okay, well, 40% of their plays against cover two failed. Well, then what you have to do is look and see why the play failed. Did the play fail because of quick pressure by the front four? In that case, it's not a cover two issue; it's a pass blocking issue, right? Did the play fail because of a drop by a receiver? Well, that's not a cover two issue. Did the play fail because Mahomes had happy feet, like we're talking about, like say the Titans or the Giants game? And I think you see like the direction I'm going, right?
Yeah.
What matters is the why, and that's what we talked about a ton after the Packers game, where on my commentary, and I maintain this, that if they shoot themselves in the foot half as much in that game, they probably score 2 full extra touchdowns worth of points. When you get a similar situation, like, say, against Denver, against Denver, they missed an extra point and a field goal. So let's say they scored 26 instead of 22. Would people still view that as a poor offensive day? And they previously would have in the Mahomes era, right? Now let's say, they go for it, they don't have a drop, multiple drops that end drives, and even one of them leads to points. So now it's 29. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what I see is self-inflicted errors, much more so than cover two versus cover one. If you go back and watch some of the Raiders game, some of their big plays were against cover two. It's not like this is like this mystery thing. I think it's just a narrative that's taken hold. I think it does affect a team. I think teams playing against the Chiefs' strengths certainly is a good idea. But I think the bigger thing is they made mistakes on their own, basically unsolicited, against, like, say, Dallas, Denver, and Green Bay, that they just didn't make against the Raiders. They didn't have nearly as many drops. They didn't, have drops that turned into interceptions like they did against Denver again.
Clyde's fumble bounced back into his chest instead of into a Raider.
Right, exactly. Yeah, imagine that something like that just goes a little bit differently, just 1 or 2 plays, and that's where they've had struggles this year. Now, will they ever get out of that? I have no idea, because the last Raiders game didn't get them out of it either. They had a great game against the Washington football team. They've had good offensive performances. Honestly, their offensive performance against Baltimore was really, really good. They just lost because of a fumble at the end of the game, which is still bugging me to this day, but what are you going to do, right? Yeah. So again, the biggest thing has been unforced errors. Penalties at inopportune times, the fact that I think Kelsey has played a little hobbled at times this year, the fact that refs are letting Kelsey be played as physically as I've ever seen it, game in and game out. And they're going to until it gets stopped. But really, these drops and the timing of drops, right? The drop percentage, I don't know, is too much higher than in previous years, but their luck and timing has been terrible. Those are the bigger issues, in my opinion. Yep. And I think that's what's going to determine whether or not they continue to get right. And so we'll see. This is an opportunity for them against a Chargers team that they moved the ball very well against in their first matchup. Yeah. They just couldn't stop turning the ball over. Yeah. And so if they let's say the Chargers play cover two, 60% of the time, and the Chiefs score 31, does that mean, the curse is lifted? I think it just means they got out of their own way.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the narrative aspect of it all, which I understand, because I think that, hey, the Chiefs have one type of coverage that turns them back into a pumpkin. I think is a way more interesting thing to talk about from a schematic standpoint than, like, if they just had stickier gloves, this whole season looks different. If their gloves are just 50% stickier than everybody else's. But I also think that makes an absolute ton of sense, because it's also one of the reasons that I don't know. I think that's an interesting point. I mentioned this on the podcast. Times are is available wherever you get your podcasts. There was the stat of, the Raiders have played the fewest. I can't remember the specific differentiation, but two deep safety, two safety shell, cover two, whatever. There's some differentiations, but the Raiders in these two games, it was the lowest percentage the Chiefs had faced this year. But also, whenever Patrick Mahomes talked about it after the first game, and he mentioned this a little bit earlier in pressers today as well, he said that they're kind of working still to that to too high looks. It's just that ultimately it looked a little bit different to a lot of people who weren't 1,000% sure what they were looking for, perhaps, or whatever the narratives end up being out of there. I also, though, it kind of ends our conversation if you just go, well, if they just stopped dropping the ball, I think they'd be fine. It's like, well, yeah, but how do they do that, though, Max? How do they do that, Stephen A? It's like, well, I don't know. They got to catch it and not give it to the other team, I guess. So it's kind of fun. I don't know. It's a weird little space we're in.
Yeah, and it really does. I think that's part of why you're seeing the conversation take the road that it does take, because, like you said, hey, stop dropping the ball and stop doing it at particularly crucial times. It feels like too easy an answer.
Yeah,
and I think
really
for a lot of people, it feels as though you're not quite making excuses, but you're kind of like making it sound like it's easily correctable and not credit what the other team is doing. Yeah. And as much as I hate to say it, that really is how I feel, at least in the recent stretch. Like against Tennessee and the Giants, I think Mahomes played poorly, and that was a big issue. I think before that, they just kept turning the stinking ball over, and they've had various versions of those types of mistakes. And that's where, they apparently something about the Raiders gets them to say, hey, you know what? What if we did catch the ball today?
Yeah.
And the results are, I would almost call, predictable. And so it'll be interesting to watch that against the Chargers and see how it goes against a team that traditionally has played them pretty tough.
Clark Hunt needs to find like a practice squad player on every team the Chiefs will play the rest of the season and pay them to go do something disrespectful before the game. That's the
absolutely.
Drive a bus, dance on a logo. I mean, it could literally be anything. Tackle Casey Wolf. Like it really does. Insult Kansas City barbecue. Maybe you save that one for the playoffs because I'm not sure the city would recover from that one within a week. But
sure.
But I think that might be the plan. And I'm gonna credit Yannick Ngakoue for the most impactful play of the day, being before the game, because he reminded the Chiefs that turnovers are bad. I'm gonna give him credit. Yannick Ngakoue, Coach of the Year vote for me.
And I think, you know what, you hit on something kind of accidentally there. Maybe not accidentally, but like the idea, turnovers bad. There's an obvious thing, right?
Yep.
And that's where whenever people are like, well, it falls back on coaching if there's failures of execution. It's like, you don't think they're coaching them to catch and protect the ball or not get stupid penalties or stick their blocks? Like, what do you don't think they're practicing that? And that's where I think you had some comments from the players earlier in the year. It's like, we just need to execute.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, it's often been true.
And the word execute for me at some point, it's like, whenever you just hear a word so many times, if I just go avocado, 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 somewhere in there I've just started like chanting. I'm not even saying the name of that. Is it a fruit? It's got a seed in the middle, so I think it's technically a fruit. Anyway, if I go guacamole, 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 eventually you lose all meaning there. Patrick Mahomes talks about executing so much that somewhere in there it stopped meaning anything, and then somewhere more recently it has started to mean something again, where I go, oh, you know what? It's a good point. If you just are executing the things that are called, the plays that you're running, and if your pass is good and the receiver catches it, you guys will go back to the Super Bowl again, actually. It kind of is about that, but like we just said, it's not a very satisfying thing to discuss as armchair quarterbacks or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. It's no fun.
Give me a quick kind of minute-long thought on Thursday Night Football, if you will. Obviously, who knows what could change between now and game time, but I don't know. I'm interested in what you're interested in as this game comes around.
The continued resurgence of Frank Clark is a big thing. How the secondary continues to perform without Chris Jones there is kind of a cheat code. But really the offensive execution, because we've seen the defense perform at a high level now for weeks and weeks, and now I want to see the offense do it for 2 weeks in a row.
Seth, I appreciate you as always. People could appreciate you even more if they went to mnchiefsfan.substack.com or to the bit.ly/Seth really hates money. That's the actual link that will actually take you there, and you can sign up for $12 for a full year, and it doesn't elevate to a higher price after that if you stay subscribed. And if, maybe eventually, maybe in 2022, I'll get Seth to raise the price so you can go lock it in now, or give one to a Chiefs fan in your life who doesn't listen to this show or doesn't follow Seth on Twitter, or might not know about the Chief of the North newsletter. It seriously, I was going to talk about it regardless, but then partway through earlier, it really did hit me that is an incredibly good gift for $12 for the Chiefs fan in your life. You could get like a 10th of a jersey, or make them 100 times smarter as a Chiefs fan. And it's also like a fun read. I enjoy what I watch more as I read Seth's breakdowns and know to look for the things that he points out there. So it's a wonderful Christmas gift for you to give to the Chiefs fan in your life. And Seth, as always, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
You know, no, I'm not Travis Kelce. God, I wish I was, though.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thanks again to Seth Keysor for being with us here tonight on Almost Entirely Sports. A lot of good stuff from there as always. And again, another encouragement to go check out the newsletter if you haven't yet. And it really is like a brilliant gift idea. In fact, Ice Pyro on Twitch said they gave their dad a subscription for Father's Day. It's a great gift. It's $12. Think about it. Think about how hard it is to come up with a good gift idea for just a person in your life, theoretically a Chiefs fan. You want to give them something that they'll actually use, that will be good, it's not too expensive, and is it going to be clutter? Are they going to wish they didn't get that gift at all? They're going to put it somewhere where they're going to put it. Chief of the North newsletter takes up 0 physical space, and it's $12 for a whole year. You can get them the same gift again next year, presumably for $12 more. It's a great idea. One of the things that we talked about there with Seth towards the end, on the offensive side of the ball, is something that I was pretty sure I knew where he would be headed in terms of the Chiefs' offensive renaissance of these last 2 games against the Raiders. And I think he's exactly right. And frankly, I came to the conclusion that he came to a while back. I think if for no other reason than because I have listened to what Seth has pointed to as the problems. Knowing what the actual problems are make the solution a little bit easier to project and to predict. And in this case for him, I get it. I get it for the Chiefs 100% here. I want you to hear from Patrick Mahomes on this topic as well, talking about some of the narratives of playing the 2 deep safeties. The idea that, that's been the thing that's frustrated the Chiefs. And it has frustrated the Chiefs. I don't think that that's really up for debate. I think if you're going to defend the Chiefs, if that is in your job description, you're an NFL defensive coordinator, you have to try to slow down the Chiefs' offense. If you gave me that assignment, I would say, well, we'll start with playing mostly 2 high safety shells, try to keep everything in front of us, not get beat over the top. We're going to double and beat the bleep out of Travis Kelce, which we have some good sound on that maybe we'll get to today, maybe we'll get to tomorrow because we won't have any more press conferences this week with the Thursday night game. But I would start, we're gonna beat the bleep out of Travis Kelce, we're going to have 2 safeties deep, and we're going to double Tyreek Hill as a part of all of that. See what they do to us there. That's still where I would start, but it's not like the Raiders didn't actually... it's not like the Raiders saw all of that and then decided to do something else, and then that's the reason the Chiefs put up 89 points in their 2 games against them this year. They did, I mentioned that stat that I don't have up in front of me right now, but the Raiders played the least cover 2, or at least 2 high. I'm trying to get my terms accurate. They played the least 2 high of any one of the Chiefs have faced at all this year. The Raiders have the 2 lowest percentages. I think that's interesting. I think it's probably part of the story. I do not think it's the entire story. Rudy, I cannot remember for the life of me. Did I leave the question at the beginning here of this clip for Patrick Mahomes? I think I might have. I think this was a Sam McDowell joint.
This is the Raiders D carryover clip?
Yeah.
No question.
All right, then I'll try to do my best to remember it precisely. Because Sam McDowell of the Kansas City Star, the reigning Sam of the sports section, by the way, which...
Shouts to Sam Mellinger.
We'll make some... I bet that...
Shouts to Sam.
I bet, Rudy, that the best gift you could give him would be to pronounce his last name correctly.
Mellinger.
It's okay. The Chiefs' PR has been getting it wrong for years now. It's all right.
Everybody was talking about him today, how much they love his writing. I'll be honest. I've listened to him a ton on the radio, and
Yeah.
I like listening to him talk.
Yeah.
His writing's great too, but I also I really like listening to the man talk.
We might take some time to suck up to the new Royals VP of Communications.
And we're gonna get that access. We better.
I like the idea that everyone is saying nice things about Sam purely because they're hoping that they get 7 minutes with Brady Singer next year.
I just know.
Think about that.
A couple years ago at spring training, Petro had me basically chasing around Swanee all day, harassing him. So Sam, if you ever find me doing that to you going forward, just know it's probably Soren Petro's fault.
And I think at that point, it's good for everybody. Makes your life easier because you can just blame Soren. Anywho, McDowell, the other Sam, as I like to call him disrespectfully. You hear that ambulance out there? That's actually for me because McDowell's going to murder me on Twitter.
McDowell's now he who remains.
That's right. That's
Sam
right.
who remains.
The Sam who remains. But he asked Mahomes, and he acknowledged the thing that I wanted to mention, which is that Mahomes talked about this a little bit when they played the Raiders the first time and said, well, really, they didn't play as much two deep safety, but they were always kind of working to that point anyway. So McDowell and Mahomes both note that, like, this is not a silver bullet or a silver and black bullet or whatever that the Raiders have refused to shoot. There's more to it. But here's Mahomes on what the Raiders did, what they've done against the Raiders, and then also how much of that they can carry over going forward.
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of the original. If you look at back to when Gus Bradley was at the Chargers, they were the original defense to kind of set back and try to make us drive the entire field. And so, I mean, I think you've seen me have success against that defense this year out of all years because I've had to deal with it kind of the entire season of be patient and take the stuff underneath. And so I think, guys, we just executed really good at those two games that we played against them. So it'll be a similar concept that I'm sure that they'll try to do to us this week. We'll play some shell coverages and stuff like that, but I'm sure they'll come up and play some man coverage as well. And I think guys just have to execute, and we have to not turn the ball over and go out there and score points.
All right, that's interesting, but it's not as interesting as what Fletch NE said on Twitch.
I just saw this too.
He said, folks on the zone said they thought JB would finish in last place of a punt, pass, and kick contest at 8-10.
They haven't seen me throw.
Sorry, what? I'm not a good punter, and I'm guessing my kick would not be awesome. But I'd put myself maybe on the medal stand in terms of like former football players among the on-show hosts and producers.
You're getting a medal, easy.
I got a chooch.
I've seen you throw.
You have, yeah. I've thrown. I think I've got film on this. What is that? I got to make some phone calls. I'll make a more important one whenever we call Craig Stout of KC Sports Network next.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
just the sports side of my life, let alone everything else. So, yes, you did a great job, though. I think you covered it all.
And at least I covered most of it. What's the last thing that you just, like, forgot to do that then you had to, like, panic solve in your life? Sports or non-sports division?
Oh, Josh, I have a 4-month-old baby right now. I can't, buddy. Like, it's probably something that happened 15 minutes ago that I haven't realized yet.
Who is a better parent of a baby, you or Kent?
Oh, definitely me.
Okay.
Like, have you seen Kent and how much time he has to spend on his hair? Like, that alone is time that he could be spending
quality
on
time.
The baby. No, he's a wonderful father. Don't let me
he could be a wonderful.
Otherwise.
His Father's Day present can say world's #2 best dad. Like, that's okay. That's still a pretty big compliment.
I mean, listen, if his kids want to get me a #1 best dad just so I can lord it over Kent, for that reason alone, I would accept it.
All right, so I'm going to open up Amazon while I ask you some questions, and later I'm going to need you to text me your address. I've done dumber things. I sent Seth some socks on air one time, and we almost sent fake poop to his old address. We didn't because he begged me not to, but we almost did. There was one thing with neighbor or luggage. I don't remember.
Yeah, sure. You didn't. We'll just go with you didn't.
Officially, as an official statement, I did not follow through on that threat. And as far as anyone listening knows, that's true.
Yes.
There's a bajillion things that we could talk about around all of the various Chiefs things and also the non-Chiefs things, and I'm sure we'll find our way back there as well. We'll find our way home. We always do. But if I was going to make you pick a thing that you have just simply enjoyed the most from the Chiefs defense over these last 6 weeks or so, what has given you the most joy in this stretch, even if it's not the most impactful thing?
Oh my goodness, that is a really hard thing for me to narrow down. So I'm going to go with the thing that has just jumped to my mind first here.
Perfect.
It's the recuperation of Dan Sorensen's legacy as a Chief. I mean that sincerely. I really do. Dan Sorensen had a phenomenal game this weekend against the Raiders. He had a really good game against the Broncos, and the dime defense featuring two of Kansas City Chiefs fans' least favorite players, Dan Sorensen and Ben Neiman, is by far their most effective package that Steve Spagnuolo puts on the field since week 6. Basically, since the Chiefs have made this turnaround on defense, those two guys have been so much better, put into their right roles, and you can see Dan's playing with a lot more confidence. You're seeing him hit better, wrap up better, make plays, and be confident in what he's doing. So that part to me has just been really enjoyable to watch. I didn't want to see this man go down in a ball of flames, and it was kind of looking and trending that way. So it's really good to see that turnaround and see a player recover that, because he's been a really good player for this team over the past 3-4 weeks.
I think you may have hinted at this with you talking about their roles, but yeah, why do you think that all is? Because I remember, I mean, look, I think most people who have talked about this team over the last few years understand that Sorensen especially, and Ben Neiman as well, have been really good at times in roles. The frustrating thing with Dan Sorensen is early in the year was who he was playing over and where he was playing, I think, at least through my eyes. So what is it that has made those two guys end up in a better spot these last few weeks?
I mean, it's the usage of the players. It's getting guys healthy. It's getting, Dan Sorensen doesn't have to be in man coverage for 4 seconds anymore because the pass rush is getting home. So he can play a little more aggressively, undercut some things a little more. We've seen that, him, breaking up a couple passes, him coming up with interceptions. These are the sorts of things that we remember about Dan Sorensen. We remember the other stuff as well. You don't want him in man coverage for a long period of time. That's just not his strength. But there are times when Steve Spagnuolo sent blitzes earlier in the year that you found that to be the case. You also don't want Dan Sorensen having to carry a speedy receiver vertically. And when he's playing that deep safety role that now Juan Thornhill plays more than he does, you were asking him to do exactly that. So, yeah, he wasn't being deployed in ways that were particularly, to his strengths, and then he just was not executing well on top of that, and it just made for a bad thing. So getting him into the roles that he is a little more successful in has definitely helped him play faster, play better, and then the pieces around. Like I said, that four-man rush is just so good right now, and everybody in the secondary is taking full advantage of it, and Steve Spagnuolo understands how to use those guys in the secondary too, as we've seen for the past couple of years. So getting them in those spots with that four-man rush has just paid dividends all over the defense.
So if the Dan Sorensen / Ben Neiman rejuvenation project has been your favorite part, is the pass rush the most important thing to this stretch?
Yeah, easily. The way that has come about is just been phenomenal. And this is coming from me, who thought that Chris Jones could make the transition to defensive end, could kick out there. This is me owning up to all of those things that I said. I called him a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, which he still is right now, by the way. I wasn't wrong about that, but just maybe where he was playing a little bit.
I don't remember anybody being particularly brave enough to say they thought that was not going to work. Like, I felt like I was being a skeptic, and even I was like, yeah, I mean, he'll probably be good at the edge also. I think we're all in good company on that.
Right, I think we are. But the transition back inside, obviously, we've all seen it. Yes. We know what that man can do on the inside. He has been an absolute wrecking ball. But Frank Clark being healthy and commanding the amount of attention that he is, and still winning while commanding the amount of attention he is, that has changed everything. Because now Melvin Ingram getting added, and I know everybody wants to put that on the feet of Melvin Ingram. Yeah. He got here. They got so much better. Listen, he's been great. Don't get me wrong. But it coincided with a lot of that stuff. Yes, moving Chris Jones back inside helps, but he was already kind of moving back inside before then. Melvin Ingram just kind of put the kibosh on that completely. But those two guys playing as well as they have is getting Melvin Ingram one-on-ones, Alex Okafor one-on-ones, Jaron Reed, Turk Wharton one-on-ones, and those guys are winning. It's not just the Chris Jones and Frank Clark show. We talk so much about this offense as a two-receiver show, essentially. It's not a two defensive line show. Yeah. They are getting after it with all those guys. And so it's so fun because offensive lines can't do anything about it. They're just in trouble at all times with this defensive line rotation. So it's really, really good. It is by far the most important change that we've seen in this defense this year.
The one thing that I guess you can do if you're an offensive line is just see if Chris Jones doesn't make the flight tomorrow, or maybe an emergency flight on Thursday. But they're probably without Rashawn Slater, so I don't know if that's quite even, but it is, a little bit against both teams there. And obviously, I'd much rather see both teams at full health than both teams somewhat equally banged up by that. But can you quantify what not having Chris Jones there will probably look like for the Chiefs on that pass rush?
I mean, they can definitely allocate more resources to stopping Frank Clark. We've seen teams do that more and more, doubling Chris Jones, doubling Frank Clark, sometimes tripling one of them while doubling the other. Now you can focus a lot more effort into rolling away from Frank Clark, bootlegging away from Frank Clark, trying to nullify him just by formation. So you got to have those guys up front still win. Like I said, Jaron Reed, Turk Wharton, those guys have played well as of late. They're really making an impact on the interior, and they're going to need to do it again. It's going to be opposite of that. Melvin Ingram needs to have a good day. Make it to be where Justin Herbert can't just roll away from Frank Clark all day, all game long. Alex Okafor needs to do the same. So those guys really have to hold the other edge. Make sure you keep Justin Herbert in the pocket because the pressure will come. I really do believe that offensive line is not good. Rashawn Slater was their best offensive lineman, and now he's potentially out for Trey Pipkins, who might be one of their worst offensive linemen. They're going to need to keep help in. They're going to need to dedicate assets to stopping the premium pass rushers for the Chiefs. So if they can get some of those secondary or ancillary weapons, I hate to call them secondary. I've been doing that this week. I need to stop ancillary weapons here to win up front. That's going to change everything because you got to hit Justin Herbert early and often.
Do you think that there is a particular strategy from Spags' side that you would lean towards one way or another in terms of Herbert? Because we've obviously seen the blitzes come through on younger quarterbacks and create some of Spagnuolo's most hilarious masterpieces. But also, Justin Herbert isn't Jordan Love, right? Like, so what would your preference be here? This also, by the way, if you think back to the other times they've seen Herbert. Week 2 last year, he was a last-second sub-in because Tyrod Taylor got a lung punctured. And then it was Week 17 in a game without starters, right? So you have the game early this year, and that's the only ramped up to 100 matchup that we've seen. And that was early season as opposed to late season in a game that kind of feels like it's for the AFC West.
Right, it really does. And even in that early season matchup, they were missing Chris Jones, they were missing Willie Gay, Charvarius Ward. I mean, Juan Thornhill wasn't playing very much. Like, there were a lot of pieces on this defense that aren't, and obviously Melvin Ingram. Obviously, they weren't a part of this. Steve Spagnuolo blitzed 24% of the time against Justin Herbert in that Week 3 matchup. He only got pressure on 18% of those. Just for reference, on the year when he blitzes, he gets pressure half of his blitzes. So that was 18% against Justin Herbert. So that's something that they need to keep in mind when he did the four-man rush. That week it was around 30% for Justin Herbert. So again, much better. Not quite as good as the awesome numbers that they're posting weekly now when they do their four-man rushes. But I would be skeptical. I wouldn't want to blitz Justin Herbert that often. I would try and win with 4 against that weaker offensive line, try and make him throw into the trees. These guys that are playing really well on the back end and communicating really well together are a lot stronger than the first time that they played. So I'd try that four-man rush. Play some games up front, test the offensive line communication, and try and hit him with that four-man rush.
If I was going to force you to make the argument that the Chiefs' defense has been, I don't want to say fluky, but that has taken advantage of some not very good quarterbacks, and then also still have a good performance against Dak Prescott. So you got like 1.5 good quarterbacks in this stretch where they've been very good. What would worry you in terms of like, hey, if something was going to come back down to earth a little bit, or if there was a way that even specifically the Chargers could exploit something you still hesitate about? Is there something in that category of something for us worriers to have?
you worriers to have. I mean, I think the thing that you would have to look out for is the thing that we've seen teams beat the Chiefs with when Spagnuolo's been playing well. That's volume targets at the cornerbacks when, these sort of 50-50 balls and challenging these cornerbacks to win at the catch point. That's not the best attribute for some of these guys. I mean, Charvarius Ward has taken, leaps and bounds forwards this year, and he still has some trouble playing it through the hands of the receivers. Rashad Fenton's kind of the same way. L'Jarius Sneed's one of the only guys that really goes up and gets it of that cornerback group. So we've seen some teams that have taken advantage of those corners. Even when they're in good position, you just still throwing the ball at bigger receivers, which the Chargers definitely have, and that group of receivers is massive. So I can see maybe Justin Herbert just testing those guys a little bit, and then maybe trying to test some of the linebackers, not Willie Gay, trying to roll away from him and try and get some of these other linebackers, Anthony Hitchens, Nick Bolton, Ben Neiman in coverage, try and get those matchups that are going to probably be a little more advantageous, try and get those guys one-on-one and beat them up over the middle. But honestly, you're really asking for trouble by doing both of those things with a good rush and with that many guys in coverage. Tyrann Mathieu back there lurking. Juan Thornhill's able to erase some stuff over the top. So it's going to be a little bit tough sledding, but if I had to see some way that this happened in a way that, the Chiefs defense didn't look so good, it would probably be in those ways that they've been beaten in the past.
Talking to Craig Stout from KC Sports Network, kcsn.substack.com, kcsportsnetwork.com. You follow him on Twitter at BarleyHop. At this point, we should be somewhere technologically where you can follow someone on Twitter by just like touching your phone to your radio or something, because that's the way you're going to be able to find everything. So you can do that, I don't know, just yell out into the sky like, "Is Patrick Mahomes broken?" And then somebody from KCSN will respond to you. No, Rudy. The answer is no.
You want an audio QR code, basically.
Yes.
That's what you're looking for here.
So I would abuse that power.
If I hum a bunch of tones, then all of a sudden everybody's phones redirect themselves to kcsportsnetwork.com.
I mean,
I love it.
I love that, and again would abuse that in a way that might get me arrested. Like, I would just be here with my Morse code beeper or whatever for just, making people follow at JB Briscoe. And eventually I would have that power taken from me.
You would use that for Twitter power. That's interesting. I mean,
that I like that fact. I like you calling that out because it shows that I'm narcissistic and selfish, but also not all of that bright. Like I could use that to say like transfer entire bank account to bank number 9999, and I didn't. I just want Twitter followers.
Yes, you did, and somehow you would get arrested for making people follow you on Twitter. That's the other part I'm struggling with in this whole scenario. But listen, you got to do what you got to do.
I'm honestly surprised I haven't just been arrested for tweeting at this point, just the way that I do it. But I wanna flip the field on you here because we've heard so much about why can't the Chiefs defeat these two high safety looks? Why can't they get through that? And then the Raiders do play a little bit less of it than anybody else had this year, but Patrick Mahomes is also now on a couple of occasions after the Raiders games, plural, sort of alluded to like, well, they weren't like not ever showing us looks like that. They just kind of got there in different ways or whatever. One thing that I've started kind of shifting more towards, and Seth beat me to the punch on this earlier in the show tonight, is kind of along these lines of, they've been able to deal with cover two or two high shells and all of that plenty in the past, and this year this crazy thing happens where the offense works better against any defense they're going up against whenever they simply catch the ball and don't turn it over, don't hand it to the other team, etc. So whenever you look at what they've done better against the Raiders defense, these two matchups, what common thread there matters more to you? And also, what are we getting right or wrong whenever we talk about how defenses have played the Chiefs this year and really with Patrick Mahomes, period?
I mean, we'll start with the Raiders here because I think the answer is fairly simple there. They just don't have the horses. I mean, and they're an NFL team. Obviously, they're professionals and everything like that. They're going through the season from hell right now, so I know there's a lot of stuff that they're dealing with, a lot of stuff that's on their plate, but they just don't have the horses to match up with what the Chiefs can do. They got a couple of okay pieces, but realistically, they're just going to always struggle with the vertical nature of the Chiefs' offense when the Chiefs can get vertical, which they do against these Raiders teams, and against the Chiefs' running backs and their running style. So it's just kind of a lose-lose situation for the Raiders. We've seen that now. This offense just looks light years different, and there's guys open, and there's plays being made, and it's just different. Now, going to this too high conversation, it's not always, and I think people are, when they hear that, they're like, how is it so difficult to play cover two? How is it so difficult to beat cover two? It's not just cover two. A lot of this Fangio-Staley style defense, they show too high before the snap, and then they will rotate, or they'll stay and then rotate super late into the high hole. So it's not just like they're showing cover two and they're staying in cover two. There's a lot of late rotations. There's a lot of aggressive downhill fills that transition into cover one or cover three. A lot of quarters that can be played out of it as well. They just disguise the coverage so well. It's not as simple as look up, see the safeties. Okay, these two guys are there. They're playing cover two. I know what this option is going to be. I know where this is going. And in a Chiefs offense that has so many option routes, and these option routes aren't just, Patrick Mahomes reading the safeties and the, cornerback leverage and everything like that. It's these receivers having to correctly identify what the coverage is and then break off a route and adjust to what is happening on the field. And that's led to a lot of miscommunication. It's led to a lot of guys that are covered way too often. And then, compounding all of that, then when you're not catching the ball and you're not executing, when you're finally open and when you're finally able to see the ball, that's just, it's all going wrong. And so you end up losing on first, second, and third down. You can't get ahead of the sticks because of one reason or another. And it's just taken a little time for the Chiefs to adjust to this. It's taken a little time to come around to it. I mean, Vic Fangio is a very good defensive coordinator. I think we razz on him as a coach a lot, as a head coach, but he's a very good defensive coordinator, and he's kind of bred this tree that kind of can call coverages like this. And when they're as varied as they are, and you have the personnel that can run it the way that some of these teams the Chiefs have seen can, now all of a sudden you run into issues because you just don't have enough guys on the same page that can win and be in the right spots.
Is there something that can be done this year that you haven't seen them do yet that you would like to see? Or whenever you talk about all the communication and everything, I mean, is that why McCole Hardman's role has decreased? Is that why Josh Gordon hasn't gotten open? Is that why Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson still get all of the reps because maybe they're a little bit more confident in that communication? What's your best sort of answer or solution on that very specific section of that?
I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say that's part of it. When Patrick is looking, when he's surveying the field, he knows that those guys are generally going to be in the spots that he wants them to be because he's played with them for a long time. He knows how they're going to run. He knows the types of option routes that they're going to read some of this stuff and break to. So even if it's maybe not exactly what he's expecting or what he wants them to do, he knows where they're going to be. And it might be a little more scattershot with some of the other receivers. Now, that being said, there's a lot of things that can be done here. Andy Reid is not just sitting around here and going, well, nothing we can do. We're just going to be doomed to this for the rest of the year. I fully believe that he is sitting on some stuff, for a game that might be important, potentially one playing on a Thursday night for the AFC West that may put the other team in a driver's seat for a potential one seed. Now would be the time. Now, this is the style of defense that everybody has said, oh, this is the one. This is the one that's given the Chiefs the most trouble. wouldn't it be a great time to now all of a sudden say, hey, yeah, no, you're not going to beat us with that stuff anymore. Here's what we're doing from here on out. And the rest of the defensive coordinators, they're going to look at this game and other games as they go forward. They're going to say, oh, well, they figured it out. Okay, well, we're going to make these tweaks. Andy's ahead of it. I fully believe he's got stuff held back, and he's just kind of been sitting on it because they've been winning enough. They've been getting by well enough, and it helps when your defense is playing this well and get out to an early lead, and then you don't have to really get too far into the playbook. You can play a little more vanilla and know some of those beaters, some of those things that you have in your back pocket, you can save for those games that you really, really absolutely need.
On the specifics of some of the option route stuff, I've talked about it on here a decent amount of time, but maybe not terribly recently. Can you give your favorite version of a quick crash course on not just what that looks like in the Chiefs' offense to the best of our knowledge, but also why it's so important and why it's difficult? Because I just think... I think that a lot of people, I catch myself doing this with defense a lot, actually. I think a lot of people think in Madden playbook plays.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I do that defensively all the time because it's easy for me to think. If you give me a zone, you say, hey, draw a zone. I'm drawing people doing it in circles and not in squares of actually having to cover everything. I'm leaving holes in it, but I'm thinking in Madden. I've been playing Madden for longer than I've had any idea what I was actually watching on television. I've had an easier time adjusting that offensively, but I don't think that we probably spend enough time talking about that.
Yeah, we don't. And see, I think that one of the things that people just assume is they're going to open a playbook, again, like you say, with Madden, and it's going to be, okay, well, this guy is running a post route, this guy is running corner route, this guy is running, and it's just, it's laid out. And people may think of it more of like we'll take it way back, even further than Madden, like Tecmo Super Bowl, where if you called the right defensive play, it was blown up. Like it was a tackle for loss, and it just happened. You got a sack, you run stuff, whatever it was. You just immediately had the counter for it. And that's not the case because these offenses aren't just going to go out there and go, all right, we're going to line up. Oh, crap, they called the right coverage. Well, we'll live to fight another day. You have variations on everything that they do. And it's not as simple as Patrick comes to the line, audibles away, because there is so much post-snap rotation. There is so much post-snap action that the defense does to try and confuse the offense that these receivers and the quarterback, but these receivers have to read the way that the cornerback is playing them, read the way that the safety is playing them, read the way that the guys around them are running their routes as well. Maybe there's a guy that's just a dedicated go route in there, and it doesn't matter what the safety does. You're just trying to clear some space out. Now you've got to read, backside and see that guy coming, be able to adjust, because you don't want two guys on top of each other. So there's so many moving pieces that happen based off of exactly what the defense is doing. It's just not static play call concepts. And so that does have to build in a certain level of trust. It's why we talk about how new receivers, rookie receivers for Andy Reid, sometimes struggle to get on the field. It's really difficult to do that because you come from a collegiate offense that maybe doesn't have that sort of option route, doesn't have those sorts of things that are in the playbook for them to freelance a little bit with a quarterback, with a collegiate quarterback. Now all of a sudden you move to the NFL, you get put into an Andy Reid offense, and Patrick Mahomes is reading the defense. He's expecting you to be in the exact spot that he thinks you should be. You got to be on the same page as him. You got to read the defense in the same way as him. So that's why the film room is so important. It's why that trust between guys is so important. It's why that communication is so important. So you see too many times that we just think, oh, that guy ran the wrong route. He might just be reading the defense different from Patrick. Now, it ends up being the wrong route because it didn't connect, but it is a situation where you need that symbiotic nature between wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback to read the defense the same way because it isn't static. Like you said, it isn't Madden. It isn't Tecmo Super Bowl.
Although somehow at the end of your very excellent explanation of all of that, I did have like an overwhelming urge to go home and play Madden tonight because I do forget how much fun that game can be. I do. I mean, I still enjoy a good Madden. You know, I enjoy NFL Street too. And at that point, you've got like 3 route runners, and they're definitely not reading the defense. But
okay, now see, and if we're going to go NFL Street and NFL Blitz and games like that, well then, yeah, now we're talking a completely different strategy, and I'm completely on board with those two.
NFL Street 2 on the GameCube remains one of my favorite games of all time. It's unbelievable.
The best.
What other games?
Ricky Williams.
Yes. What and what? Here's the thing. You say Ricky Williams. I say Joshua Brisco, because make yourself ripped, make yourself unstoppable. Take your shirt off, wear a chain, and you're all of a sudden you're the best quarterback on your fictional team, because NFL Street 2 gave you that. It brought that to the table.
I see. I've just got an image of you creating a character that looks like John Cena from the early 2000s with the chain and the jean shorts and the backwards hat, and that's what your guy looked like. And he was a running back, and he was 99 everything, and you just ran over everybody.
That's more or less what my, I would say, age 13 through 15 video game experience was literally doing exactly that. And honestly, I'm kind of hoping that that's going to be my roughly 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. tonight as well, because it sounds awesome, and I've really got it. You know what, does. Rudy, could you do the rest of this show? I just got a text, and the dog is sick, and I gotta go now for the dog.
I think you're gonna need a little bit more time than the rest of the show to look like John Cena.
Not just in the video game, Rudy. You know, if I look like John Cena, you wouldn't be able to see me at all for being technically correct about all of this. So, Craig, thank you very much for just for everything, you know, for being being KCSN's best dad, to being our, you know, best guest tonight. I now have sideswiped Kent, Seth, Matt, BJ. Wow. I don't know. Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why this has become such a violent show. It's because I'm thinking about playing NFL Street 2 and not thinking about this radio show anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, your mind, you are completely checked out. You are already home. Yeah. You're running up walls. You're spinning away from everybody. Like, you're gone. You're out of here already, man.
I am wearing my backpack. I am hanging out the door of the studio right now, and I am pitching it to Rudy on the wall jump. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, guys.
Craig Stout of KCSN. You can follow him on Twitter at BarleyHop. You can go to kcsn.substack.com for all of the written content of the Substack. It is a wonderful Substack, worth every penny. Go check that out at kcsn.substack.com, kcsportsnetwork.com. I got to make those guys a bit.ly. I need a kcsn.substack.com bit.ly link for them, a custom URL. You have an idea, Rudy? You've come to the microphone as if
Craig's a better dad than Kent.
I'll see if it's available during the break.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere? WHB.
I think we were doing a video game character bracket there, Rudy. Like it had to be it,
I think
right?
it was the Ringers whole deal, and I called Henry Cavill Big Daddy.
Rightfully so.
He is. I just don't remember saying it.
Speaking of Big Daddies, if you want to go to KCSN Substack, you can now go to bit.ly/ all lowercase here. Craig is a better dad than Kent.
Craig asked for it. He demanded that be the bit.ly.
I'm gonna make sure this link is actually. Oh, it's too long for the. I'm gonna have to run this one back again. This is really upsetting. Twitter thinks that my quick, short, easy to remember link is too complicated, which I think is a crying shame. Speaking of things that are absolutely shameful, Rudy, have you seen the new trailer for Netflix's next award-winning film?
No. What?
I thought about just playing the audio for it. If you haven't seen it, I think the move is to just play it live off that computer. Here are the search terms: Kevin James, Sean Payton, Netflix movie.
I know what movie you're talking about, but I have not seen the trailer. No.
The trailer's here. And here's what I'd like to go ahead and do with this portion of this evening's show. The visuals of this are important. And if just listening to it isn't very funny, we'll bail out early because the trailer's probably like 2 minutes long.
2 minutes, 14 seconds.
But this trailer is essentially Paul Blart Football Cop, where Kevin James plays Sean Payton, focusing on the year that he was suspended from the NFL after Bountygate, and Taylor Lautner from Twilight, I think I watched the trailer, I think is the head coach of Sean Payton's son's football team. We might not play this whole thing. In fact, we probably shouldn't. But I'd love for you to hear just some of the opening dialogue here. Let's get to the setup
of whatever this is called. What's it called, Rudy? The
home team.
Home team. Have a little snippet. Have a little taste of Kevin James as Sean Payton.
Kevin James is celebrating.
Hey, Coach. Mr. Goodall is on the phone?
Roger Goodell's on the phone. The commissioner.
He didn't say what his job was.
Coach
That's a good night.
Suspended for a full year.
Sean, what are you doing here?
Just came to watch my son play football.
Oh, these
Played a great
kids are
game
hard.
You lost 0-40.
Can't help it if all your teammates are horrible. He was good too. A couple of good guys.
We're the worst team in the league.
They need some motivation. Are you seriously ordering a pizza right now?
Oh yeah, I want stuffed crust. What kind of question is that?
It's true. What kind of question is
You
that?
got suspended. Being Sean Payton's son ain't easy. It may be easier on him if you were on that field.
That's where I was out, actually.
Yeah.
Taylor Lautner saying...
Oh, they just kicked a kid trying to kick a field goal. Hit him right in the butt.
I think there might be a curse late in this now that I'm thinking about it. So let's go ahead and get out of here before...
Did you hear the kid? The kid was like, oh, great, because our defense sucks too, when they said Sean Payton's going to be the offense coordinator.
No, I talked over it on purpose because I felt like there might have been one swear later on. Here's the thing. Did you get the vibe from that?
For sure.
This is a family movie.
It's a family comedy.
That starts off...
with the son and the dad coming together.
Right.
Because Sean Payton's clearly just made a movie about how, hey, I was a terrible father for my son the first 12 years of his life.
A lot of it is really weird. I think maybe the weirdest thing to me...
Just like LeBron James made a movie basically telling Bronny to stop being a nerd.
And get cool.
And get better at basketball.
Fair. I think for me, the strangest part of it, and man, the whole trailer is just a freaking fever dream. But I think the craziest thing is that the inciting incident of this movie is Sean Payton being suspended for a year. Oh, I just remembered. Hold on.
Oh, no.
Just play the audio of that section. This is how the trailer ends. It's not. I don't think it is a curse. I think it is simply this part.
Okay, here we go. It's a little montage heading up to it.
Super log! Super log! Ain't gonna score, boys.
I'm afraid there
It's
might be a
raining
curse.
right now. Oh my goodness. They're projectile feces.
That's it. They were projectile vomiting.
Because of a thing called the log.
The inciting incident of this film is that Sean Payton got suspended for an entire year because players on his team were getting extra little bonuses for purposefully injuring other players. That's how this started.
Which means, who better to teach your kids football, right?
Right. Somebody else made this joke already, so I don't know if it was a Platinum Sombrero tweet, but it seems like it could have been, and if not, I'm happy to give Platinum Sombrero extra credit because I'm sure I've stolen their jokes before. But it was basically like, yeah, so tell me again, well, which part of the movie do the kids get, like, extra orange slices if they break little Jimmy's bleeping leg?
I'm just saying, I saw one of the hits that the kid laid on another kid.
Did he leave with his head?
I'm just saying, a kid, one of Sean Payton's kids hit another kid on the other team, and he did like a backflip thing. I'm not saying he was headhunting. I'm not saying he wasn't trying to get another one of those logs. I don't know.
And Chaotic Warrior notes that this is Sean Payton stepping in to help coach alongside Jacob the werewolf from Twilight.
Think about his career. After Twilight, Jacob the werewolf, Taylor Lautner, was like big time.
Yeah, what has he done?
And now he's just starring as some random football coach alongside Kevin James in a Netflix original. Oh boy.
I don't know if you've also, you, Rudy, you, the listener, if you've seen, there's the trailer for, I can't remember what this one's called either, but the Kurt Warner movie, the Zachary Levi.
Yeah.
And just to be, Kurt Warner seems like a good man with a good story. I'm not surprised that they're making a movie out of it. It makes enough sense. I'll be stoked
stunned out of my mind if that movie is good. But here's the thing. As far as I can tell, they're really trying to make that movie be good. And this trailer ends with Kevin James, Sean Payton, Paul Blart, football cop, with a bunch of kids barfing on each other.
Here's the thing.
At least they're telling you who they are on the label here, right, man?
You can't have Kevin James in a movie and try to make it something serious.
Right.
Also, to be fair, I don't know if you can take a story about Sean Payton coaching his team's Little League team when he has been suspended because of Bountygate and even try to make that serious, because we're smart people. We see right through that. Can we laugh at Bountygate? Sure.
Sure.
Can we take it seriously in terms of Sean Payton used the year off to learn how to love his son, who I'm sure he is still a huge disappointment to him? I don't think so. We need the humor.
This comes out on the same day. We're gonna get really dark here, and I'm really sorry, but it just thought it came into my mind, and what am I gonna do? Filter it out? Philip Adams was the former NFL player who killed 6 people before killing himself a little while back. Came out today that he had a severe case of CTE. Repeated blows to the head, life of playing football, all of that. Probably some other very bad things happening there as well. Tragic story. Guys, Sean Payton got suspended for having his players hit other players in the head too hard. Here are his kids barfing on each other. Ha 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 ha.
I'm Kevin James.
I'm Kevin James. Hi. You might know me from my role as Paul Blart Mall Cop. Here I am as a disgraced football coach whose players hurt other players on purpose for money.
It was good to see.
It's a comedy.
Rob Schneider, got a team back up since Grown Ups 3.
Sure.
I think they made 3 of those movies.
Yeah. It's just how are we doing this, man?
Honestly, this is very easy. This is a case of Netflix has so much money, man, that basically if you find a way to pitch them anything, because they have money that they just have to spend. Like money that they're like, hey, we legally need to spend this, otherwise tax season comes around, we're in trouble.
Right.
So basically their policy is anybody who can actually get through the door, if you find a way to get through the door, doesn't matter the pitch, doesn't matter how bad it may sound, they're just like, done. Let's do this.
They have a series on Aaron Hernandez, who also had stage 2 CTE, as did this guy that killed a bunch of his neighbors, which is again obviously horrendous. But they're like, yeah, look, we're gonna go this way, and then we're gonna do a lighthearted family comedy based on Bountygate. Are we sure, man?
They got so much money, man.
But do they not have somebody who just says, "Hey, let's spend that money on another season of"?
Well, they don't have that much money.
Of honestly, I don't know.
I mean, if you want to
get Birdie or something,
if you want to get serious on this, what they should be spending their money on, there's this TV show. I recommend you watch this, Josh. I think you and Renee would both really like it.
Okay.
It's called Sense8. It's a Netflix original.
Oh yeah, I've seen it recommended. Yeah.
It is phenomenal. It is one of the best things I've ever watched. The show got canceled because it just got to be too expensive to make, because they literally had they were filming it because it takes place, little brief synopsis, takes place involves 8 people who literally live all around the world.
This seems like something that should make your shot clock review list.
I couldn't explain this show in
that's fine. You can explain it now, but if you wanted to,
basically though, it's one of the characters is and they actually get actors from those places, so they get a woman from who lives in South Korea, and she is an insanely famous South Korean actress, but they film all of it actually in South Korea, her scenes, instead of they basically spent a ton of money to make sure to try to make this as authentic as possible. Each season takes place in 7 different countries.
Jeez.
And the show was fantastic, but they canceled it because it just got to be too expensive.
Yeah, and that seems like a better...
I would like that money to go back to that.
Yeah, it's just that... Here's the thing, Rudy. I mean, you make a lot of great points, but it's just that Bountygate is really freaking funny.
It was pretty funny.
It's just that all of that is funny, and so is Kevin James.
He is... because it's not in Sense8.
Kevin James?
Kevin James is not in Sense8.
How do you think Sean Payton felt about that casting?
I kind of see it in the face, honestly. It kind of works. Sean Payton's, I don't want to say he's skinny,
No, but I think if you're Sean Payton, you're hoping for Rob Riggle.
Yeah.
You know? Riggle could pull it off. You're hoping for, I don't know. You know what I know? Not Paul Blart.
Take the show with you wherever you go. Listen live on the Sports Radio 810 mobile. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
This show is an oddball, and I love that about it.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Craig Stout, who joined us at the beginning of the hour, has introduced another bit.ly to the world. If you want to go to KC Sports Network's bit.ly, you can go to bit.ly/Craig is a better dad than Kent. If you would like to follow me on Twitter at JB Brisco, you can go to Craig's new bit.ly, which is bit.ly/John Cena in NFL Street 2. That'll take you to my Twitter account. As long as we're sending you bit.lys of people who have been on this show today, you can go to bit.ly/Seth Really Hates Money and subscribe to the Chief of the North newsletter there. And Rudy, I guess you need a bit.ly now.
Yeah, I don't have a bit.ly.
What do we want it to be? And what do we want it to go to, you know?
Bit.ly/Broken Dreams.
That's probably taken. You want to see where that one goes really quick? Let's see.
Let's do it.
Let's see. We're playing roulette. Okay, bit.ly/ what is it? We're reading Broken Dreams. I'm nervous about this one. It takes me to a blog post from, I believe,
Found my blog.
April 30th, maybe 2014. I think it's about the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Or something. No, that's the title of the post, but it's actually a movie blog or something. Anyway, if this dude gets some extra traffic today, welcome to Almost Entirely Sports. We'll talk to you tomorrow night, 8 to 10 tomorrow. Kit Swanson will be on, second best dad in the world. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Matt Coker here from West Coast Men's Health. Guys, Viagra is not the answer for your problem. I know you think it is,